The jagged peaks of Epsilon Ridge pierced the crimson sky like the broken teeth of a long-dead beast. Captain Elias Vega stood at the edge of the command platform, his eyes scanning the barren expanse below. Windswept dunes and jagged rock formations stretched for miles, offering little comfort to the small, beleaguered human outposts clinging to survival on this hostile alien world. "They're coming, aren't they?" Lieutenant Zara Lee's voice cut through the silence, sharp and impatient. Her flight jacket hung loosely over her shoulders, a testament to the grueling weeks of battle they had already endured. She leaned against the railing, her piercing gaze fixed on the horizon. "They wouldn't have sent us the transmission if they weren't," Vega replied, his voice calm but weighted. His fingers tightened around the tablet displaying intercepted Krelth communications. A fleet, no, an armada, was heading their way. "The Krelth don't bluff," Zara snorted, pushing off the railing with restless energy. "Great. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and sitting on a pile of ruins they think is some secret weapon. Remind me again why Command thought this outpost was worth defending?" "Because it's not just ruins," came a new voice from behind them. Dr. Alina Chan, the team's resident scientist, emerged from the dimly lit interior of the command post, her lab coat flapping in the wind. In her hands she carried a small device brimming with faint blue light, a prototype shield generator she had been working on for months. "These ruins house technology that could tip the balance of this war. If we lose this ridge, we lose the chance to understand it." Zara rolled her eyes but didn't argue. Vega turned to face Chan, his expression unreadable. "How soon can you get that thing operational?" Chan hesitated, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. "It's still experimental. If I had more time." "We don't have time," Vega interrupted, his tone firm but not unkind. "The Krelth fleet will be here within 36 hours. Whatever that thing can do, it needs to be ready." Chan swallowed hard but nodded. "I'll make it work." Vega turned back to the horizon, his jaw tightening. The weight of command pressed heavily on his shoulders. He had been stationed on Epsilon Ridge as a precautionary measure, a mere placeholder in a galaxy-spanning war. Now they were the first, and possibly the last, line of defense against a force that could obliterate them with ease. Inside the cramped confines of the outpost's main control room, the atmosphere was tense. Vega studied the holographic map of the ridge, its jagged contours glowing faintly in the dim light. The Krelth fleet was represented by ominous red markers, slowly converging on their position. "Zara, I need you to scout their advance," Vega said, not looking up. "We need eyes on the ground to confirm their landing zones." Zara scoffed but grabbed her helmet. "You're sending me out there alone? Bold move, Captain. You're the best pilot we have," Vega replied evenly. "And I need someone who can get in and out without being spotted." Zara smirked, the challenge igniting a spark in her eyes. "Fine. But if I don't come back, it's on you." Vega glanced at her, his expression softening for just a moment. "You'll come back." As Zara left, Chan approached the table, her prototype device clutched tightly in her hands. "Elias," she began, her voice quieter now. "There's something you need to know." "What is it?" Vega asked, his gaze still fixed on the map. Chan hesitated, then placed the device on the table. "The shielding technology, it's unstable. If we overload it, there's a chance it could detonate." Vega's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "Detonate? As in? Level the entire ridge?" Chan finished grimly. "It's a last resort, but if the Krelth break through..." Vega stared at the glowing device, his mind racing. The thought of turning their only hope into a weapon of mass destruction made his stomach churn. But the alternative, letting the Krelth take the ridge and the secrets buried beneath it, was unthinkable. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," he said finally, his voice steady. The hours dragged on as preparations continued. Soldiers fortified the outpost's defenses, welding makeshift barriers and rigging explosives along the rocky passes. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning for signs of the approaching enemy. Chan worked tirelessly in her lab, fine-tuning the shield generator with a grim determination that left little room for doubt. As night fell, Vega found himself alone on the platform once more, the icy wind biting at his face. He stared up at the stars, his thoughts heavy. Somewhere out there, reinforcements were supposed to be en route. But would they arrive in time? And even if they did, could they stand against the Kreltha's overwhelming firepower? His musings were interrupted by the sound of boots on metal. He turned to see Zara, her face flushed and hair disheveled from the wind. "You're back," he said, relief threading through his words. "Don't sound so surprised." Zara shot back, though her smirk was weary. "I got what you needed. They've set up 3 staging points about 10 clicks out. Looks like they're planning a full-scale ground assault." Vega nodded, his mind already working through the implications. "Did they see you?" Zara shook her head. "Not a chance. I'm too fast for them." "Good." Vega placed a hand on her shoulder, a rare gesture of gratitude. "Get some rest. We'll need you in the air tomorrow." As Zara walked away, Vega turned his gaze back to the horizon. The red glow of the enemy fleet was visible now, a faint but ominous smear against the dark sky. The countdown had begun. The next morning, the first warning came in the form of a low, reverberating hum. The outpost shook as the Krelth's ships entered the atmosphere, their engines casting eerie shadows across the ridge. Soldiers scrambled into position, weapons at the ready. Vega stood at the forefront, his eyes narrowing as the enemy vessels loomed larger. "Chan," he called over the comms. "Is the shield ready?" "Just about," came her reply, her voice tight with concentration. "Don't do anything reckless until I give the signal. Reckless is my specialty." Vega muttered under his breath, earning a chuckle from Zara, who stood nearby with her fighter helmet under one arm. "Let's see if these bastards are as tough as they think," she said, a fierce grin spreading across her face. Vega nodded, his grip tightening on his rifle. The Krelth were here, and there was no turning back. The battle for Epsilon Ridge had begun. The tremor beneath Epsilon Ridge felt alive, a harbinger of the chaos to come. Captain Elias Vega gripped the railing of the command platform, his gaze locked on the sky. The enemy was descending, their silhouettes sharp against the crimson dawn. Each vessel was a monstrosity of biomechanical design, pulsating with an unsettling, organic rhythm. "Commander, they're deploying ground units." Zara's voice crackled through the comms, her fighter's engine roaring in the background. "Looks like they're splitting into 3 waves. Heavy mechs, infantry, and something bigger." "What do you mean by bigger?" Vega asked, his voice taut. "Can't confirm yet. It's staying back, almost like it's waiting," Zara replied, frustration lacing her tone. Vega inhaled sharply, his mind racing. The Krelth were known for their calculated ruthlessness. They wouldn't waste resources unless they had a devastating plan. "Stay on them. Report anything unusual." "Copy that." The connection cut, leaving Vega to face the silent tension brewing within the command center. Behind him, Dr. Alina Chan adjusted the shimmering prototype shield generator. Its core pulsed with an otherworldly blue light, casting fleeting shadows across her determined face. "How long until it's fully operational?" Vega asked, his tone betraying his urgency. "An hour or maybe less," Chan said without looking up. Her hands moved deftly over the device, calibrating its systems with surgical precision. "But if they hit us with an EMP before it's live, we're done. Then we don't give them the chance." Vega turned toward the tactical map, where red markers representing enemy units crept closer. "Send the first wave to intercept their infantry. Focus fire on the mech's legs. Slow them down." On the battlefield, the first echoes of war erupted. Plasma bolts seared through the air, illuminating the jagged landscape with bursts of white-hot energy. Human soldiers, outnumbered but fiercely determined, took cover behind hastily constructed barriers. Their rifles discharged in rhythmic precision, each shot aimed to cripple the advancing Krelth. Zara's fighter soared overhead, her HUD flashing with targeting data. She lined up her crosshairs on a towering mech, its spindly legs carving deep trenches into the rocky ground. Locking in. Missile away. The projectile streaked across the sky, striking the mech's left leg. It stumbled, its movements jerky and disoriented, before collapsing into a plume of dust and fire. Zara smirked, her confidence bolstered. One down. Who's next? Inside the command center, the battle played out in real time on a holographic display. Vega watched the lines of red and blue shift and collide, his brow furrowed in concentration. He leaned closer, studying the enemy's formations. They're testing us, he muttered. Chan glanced up, sweat beading her forehead. What do you mean? They're probing our defenses, looking for weak points, Vega said, his voice low. This isn't their full force. The weight of his words hung in the air, a grim reminder that the worst was yet to come. The second wave hit harder. The Krelth unleashed their biological infantry, grotesque, insected creatures swarming over the ridge with horrifying speed. Their chittering cries echoed across the battlefield, sending shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned soldiers. Private Daniels, crouched behind a barricade, gritted his teeth as he fired into the horde. These things just keep coming, he yelled, his voice cracking. Hold the line! His sergeant bellowed, launching a grenade into the mass. The explosion tore through the creatures, but for every one that fell, two more took its place. Overhead, Zara's fighter strafed the swarm, her guns blazing. Elias, we've got a serious problem down here, she said, her voice sharp. We need more firepower. Hold tight, Vega replied, his tone unwavering. He turned to Chan. How much longer? Almost there, she said, her fingers dancing across the console. Just give me a few more minutes. Minutes felt like hours as the battle intensified. Vega's orders came rapid fire, his voice steady even as the situation spiraled. Redirect units to Sector 3. Focus all artillery on the eastern flank. Zara, can you get a visual on that larger unit? Already on it, Zara replied, banking her fighter for a closer look. The shape lurking in the distance was massive, its outline obscured by dust and shadow. As she approached, her scanners lit up with warnings. Elias, you're not going to like this. It's some kind of siege weapon. What kind of weapon? Vega demanded. It's alive, Zara said, her voice faltering. The creature was enormous, a grotesque amalgamation of organic and mechanical parts. Its limbs pulsed with a sickly green glow, and its head, if it could be called that, housed a pulsating cannon. They're bringing a bioartillery unit, Chan said, horror creeping into her voice. If that thing gets in range. It won't, Vega interrupted. Zara, take it out. Working on it, she said, weaving through enemy fire. Her targeting system locked onto the creature's central node, a throbbing mass of tissue and metal. She fired her missiles, but the creature's glowing limbs deflected them, its shield absorbing the impact. Damn it! Its defenses are too strong. The ground shook as the bioartillery fired its first shot, a massive projectile of green energy that slammed into the ridge. The explosion sent soldiers sprawling, and a section of the outpost's defenses crumbled. Vega! Zara shouted. We can't take much more of this. In the command center, Vega clenched his fists. Chan, is it ready? Chan looked up, her face pale but resolute. The shield is live, but we'll have to reroute power from the weapons grid. Do it, Vega said without hesitation. We'll hold them off with what we have. Chan activated the generator, and a shimmering dome of energy enveloped the outpost. The next blast from the bioartillery struck the shield, dispersing in a cascade of light. The soldiers on the ground cheered, their morale bolstered. The battle reached a fever pitch as the Krelth redoubled their efforts. Vega's orders came faster, his mind a blur of strategy and survival. Zara continued her aerial assault, searching for a weakness in the bioartillery's defenses. Chan monitored the shield generator, her hands steady despite the case. Finally, Zara's voice crackled through the comms. Elias, I've got an idea, but it's risky. I'm listening, Vega said. There's a vent near its core, Zara explained. If I can hit it with a precision strike, it might overload. Do it, Vega said without hesitation. But be careful. Zara dove toward the creature, her heart pounding. The vent was small, barely visible through the haze of battle. She fired her last missile, holding her breath as it streaked toward its target. The impact was immediate, a chain reaction ripping through the bioartillery. It let out a deafening roar before collapsing in a heap of smoking debris. "Direct hit," Zara said, her voice shaky but triumphant. Back in the command center, Vega allowed himself a small sigh of relief. "Good work," he said. "But this isn't over." The holographic map showed more red markers converging on their position. The Krauth weren't retreating, they were regrouping. Chan looked at Vega, her expression grim. "What do we do now?" Vega's gaze hardened. "We hold the line. No matter what." The aftermath of the bioartillery's destruction lingered in the air like the acrid smoke that clung to the battlefield. Despite the small victory, Captain Elias Vega's chest tightened as he stared at the holographic map. The red markers representing the Krauth forces were still advancing, now consolidating into a single, overwhelming column. "Captain, there's shifting tactics," Dr. Alina Chan said, her voice taut with exhaustion. She adjusted her glasses, the blue glow of the shield generator illuminating her pale face. "The shield won't hold against sustained fire if they bring their entire force to bear. Then we make sure they don't get the chance," Vega replied, his tone steel. He turned toward the comm panel. "Zara, report." "Still airborne, but barely." Zara's voice crackled through the speaker, underscored by the hum of her damaged fighter. "I've got 2 stabilizers offline and I'm running on fumes. Whatever you're planning, make it quick." Vega's jaw tightened. They were running out of time and options. "Stay in the air as long as you can. We're going to hit them before they hit us." The Krauth's advance was methodical, their infantry units swarming like ants over the shattered terrain. Behind them, a line of armored vehicles and towering mechs moved with eerie precision, their weapons glowing faintly in the dim light. The Krauth commander, a towering figure encased in an organic exoskeleton, stood atop a hovercraft, his gaze fixed on the ridge. "They're too disciplined," Vega muttered, watching the live feed from one of the drones. "They're waiting for something. Or someone," Chan added, her brow furrowing. "I've seen this pattern before. They're baiting us into overcommitting. Then let's give them a reason to regret it," Vega said. His mind churned with strategies, each one more desperate than the last. Finally, he turned to Chan. "Can you modify the shield generator to create a focused pulse? Something strong enough to disable their mechs, even temporarily?" Chan hesitated. "It's risky. The generator wasn't designed for offensive use. If I push it too hard—" "Do it," Vega said, cutting her off. "We don't have another option." The plan was simple in theory, dangerous in execution. Vega's forces would lure the Krauth into range of the ridge's defenses while Chan prepared the generator for an electromagnetic pulse. Zara would act as a decoy, drawing the Krauth mechs into a tight formation. The pulse would disable their systems long enough for the infantry to sweep through and dismantle their ranks. As Vega relayed the plan to his soldiers, he caught glimpses of their faces, resolute, but weary. Each of them knew the odds were stacked against them, yet none wavered. These were the moments that defined humanity, he thought, not the battles won with superior firepower, but the ones fought with unyielding resolve. Zara's fighter streaked across the battlefield, a streak of fire against the churning sky. Her HUD flickered with warnings, her systems struggling to keep pace. "Elias, you better make this work," she muttered, her fingers dancing over the controls. "Just keep them busy a little longer." Vega's voice came through the calm. "We're almost ready." Zara dove low, skimming the ground as Krauth mechs locked onto her position. Their plasma cannons fired in unison, bolts of green energy scorching the air. Zara banked hard, the G-forces pressing her into her seat. "Come on, you ugly bastards! Follow me." The mechs responded, their massive frames lumbering after her. Zara weaved through the wreckage of the battlefield, her fighter narrowly avoiding the twisted remains of fallen machines. Her heart pounded in her chest, each second a test of nerve and skill. Back at the ridge, Chan worked frantically, her hands a blur as she reconfigured the generator's parameters. Sweat dripped down her temple as she muttered calculations under her breath. Almost there, just a few more adjustments. Vega stood nearby, his rifle slung over his shoulder. He watched the approaching enemy through a pair of binoculars, his expression grim. The Krauth were closing in, their mechs clustering together in a perfect formation. "Chan, we need that pulse now." "I'm working as fast as I can," she snapped, her voice edged with panic. The generator's core pulsed erratically, its energy levels climbing dangerously high. "If I push it too far, it could." "I'll take the risk," Vega said firmly. "Do it." Chan swallowed hard, then pressed a series of commands into the console. The generator emitted a low hum, its light intensifying. "Charging, hold on." On the battlefield, Zara's fighter darted through the enemy formation, drawing the mechs closer together. "They're all yours, Elias," she said, her voice breathless. "Just don't make me regret this." "Understood," Vega replied. He turned to Chan. "Now." Chan activated the pulse, and the generator released a blinding surge of energy. A wave of blue light rippled across the battlefield, washing over the Krauth mechs. Sparks erupted from their joints as their systems overloaded, their movements grinding to a halt. "It worked!" Chan exclaimed, her relief palpable. "Focus fire on the mechs!" Vega shouted into the calm. "Take them down while they're vulnerable." The human infantry surged forward, their weapons blazing. Plasma bolts struck the immobilized mechs, tearing through their armor. Soldiers moved with precision, dismantling the Krauth's ranks piece by piece. The tide of battle began to turn, but the Krauth commander was not finished. From his vantage point, he observed the chaos with cold calculation. Raising one clawed hand, he issued a command. A massive shape emerged from the shadows, a second bioartillery unit, larger and more advanced than the first. "Elias, we've got a problem." Zara's voice crackled over the calm. "They've got another big one, and this one's not holding back." Vega's stomach dropped as he saw the monstrous creature lumbering toward the ridge. Its cannon pulsed with green energy, already charging for a devastating shot. "Chan, can we fire another pulse?" She shook her head, panic in her eyes. "The generator's already unstable. If we try again, it'll blow. Then we'll have to take it out the hard way," Vega said grimly. He turned to Zara. "Think you can hit it where it hurts?" "With what?" she retorted. "I'm out of missiles." Vega clenched his jaw, his mind racing. The stakes had never been higher, and the options had never been fewer. "Then we improvise," he said finally. "Zara, get its attention. Chan, get me a detonator. If we're going to stop that thing, we'll need to get up close." As the battle raged on, Vega prepared for the most dangerous gambit of his career. The Krauth bioartillery loomed ever closer, its cannon aimed squarely at the ridge. The tension was palpable, each second ticking down to a moment of reckoning. "Let's finish this," Vega said, his voice steady despite the chaos. He stepped onto the battlefield, a detonator in hand, ready to face the impossible. The battlefield roared with chaos as Captain Elias Vega sprinted across the ridge, his boots crunching against shattered rock and scorched earth. The massive bioartillery loomed ahead, its grotesque form pulsating with green energy as it charged its cannon. Behind him, human soldiers fought valiantly, holding back waves of Krauth forces while Vega executed his desperate gambit. "Vega, what the hell are you doing?" Zara's voice crackled through his calm. Her damaged fighter buzzed overhead, weaving through sporadic plasma fire. "Buying us time," Vega replied, clutching the detonator strapped to his chest. "Keep that thing distracted. I'm getting close enough to end this." "You're insane!" Zara shouted, banking hard to avoid a plasma bolt. "But I'll cover you." Above, the sky shimmered with the shield's energy field, battered but holding. Dr. Alina Chan's voice broke through the comms. "Elias, the generator can't take another hit. If that thing fires, the shield will collapse, and the outpost will be exposed. Then we make sure it doesn't fire," Vega said, determination hardening his tone. The bioartillery, a towering amalgamation of flesh and machine, lumbered forward. Its limbs slammed into the ground with seismic force, sending tremors through the ridge. Its cannon, a grotesque, pulsating mass of energy, emitted an ominous hum that reverberated in Vega's chest. Vega ducked behind a jagged boulder, catching his breath. The smell of scorched metal and sulfur filled the air, mingling with the acrid tang of smoke. He glanced at the detonator in his hand, its blinking light a constant reminder of the stakes. "Chan, how much time do we have?" Vega asked, peeking out to assess the bioartillery's movements. "Minutes, if that," Chan replied, her voice strained. "The shield's integrity is at critical levels." Vega nodded to himself, steeling his resolve. "Understood." Zara's fighter roared past, her cannons blazing as she targeted the bioartillery's shield emitters. The energy field rippled under her assault but held firm. "Elias, I can't crack this thing alone," she said. "You've got to find another way." "I'm working on it," Vega muttered, his eyes scanning the creature for any weaknesses. His gaze fell on a cluster of exposed cables near its underbelly, sparking faintly with each step. "I see a vulnerability. Keep its attention." Zara pulled her fighter into a tight loop, firing a barrage of rockets at the bioartillery's head. The massive creature roared, its cannon swiveling to track her. "You better move fast," she yelled. Vega darted from cover, weaving through debris as plasma fire erupted around him. The heat singed his skin, and the deafening explosions rang in his ears. He reached the base of the bioartillery, its massive frame casting a shadow over him. The cables were within reach, but the creature's legs shifted, threatening to crush him underfoot. Vega pressed himself against the ground, narrowly avoiding the massive limb as it smashed into the earth. He could feel the vibration through his bones, a reminder of just how fragile he was in comparison. "Almost there," Vega muttered, crawling toward the cables. His heart pounded, adrenaline surging through his veins. At the command center, Chan monitored the battlefield with frantic eyes. The shield's energy levels flickered dangerously low, and the console blared warning alarms. "Elias, whatever you're doing, do it now!" she shouted. "I'm in position," Vega said, his voice steady despite the chaos. He reached the cables, their exposed wires sparking erratically. Pulling a small plasma cutter from his belt, he began slicing through them. The bioartillery let out a guttural roar, its movements becoming erratic as Vega severed its connections. Sparks erupted from its underbelly, and its cannon dimmed momentarily before reigniting with renewed fury. "Come on, you piece of junk!" Vega growled, cutting through the final cable. The creature convulsed, its legs buckling as its systems short-circuited. Vega rolled away as it collapsed, its massive frame crashing into the ground with a deafening impact. For a moment, silence fell over the battlefield. The bioartillery lay motionless, its glowing cannon extinguished. Cheers erupted from the human forces as the tide seemed to turn in their favor. "Vega, you did it!" Zara's voice crackled through the comms, her relief palpable. "Not yet," Vega said, rising to his feet. His eyes narrowed as the Krelth commander emerged from the smoke, his exoskeleton gleaming in the dim light. Flanked by a squad of elite guards, he advanced toward Vega with deliberate precision. Vega activated his calm. "Zara, Chan, hold the line. I'm dealing with this." The Krelth commander stood a head taller than Vega, his alien features obscured by the organic armor that encased him. His voice was a guttural growl, translated through Vega's calm implant. "Human, your resistance is futile. Surrender, and I may spare your pitiful colony." Vega smirked, his grip tightening on his rifle. "Funny, I was about to say the same thing." The commander lunged, his clawed hand swiping at Vega with lightning speed. Vega dodged, rolling to the side and firing a burst of plasma shots. The commander's armor absorbed the impact, the energy dissipating harmlessly. "You'll have to do better than that," the commander snarled, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Vega threw a grenade, the explosion creating a cloud of smoke that briefly obscured his movements. Using the distraction, he flanked the commander, aiming for the weak joints in his armor. A well-placed shot struck home, and the alien let out a roar of pain. Back at the ridge, The remaining Krauth forces faltered as the bioartillery's destruction and their commanders struggled demoralized them. Human soldiers pressed their advantage, pushing the enemy back with a relentless counteroffensive. Chan's voice crackled over the calm. Elias, the shield's stabilizing. We're holding. Good, Vega replied, his focus on the commander. I'll finish this. The commander lashed out with a final, desperate strike, but Vega anticipated the move. He sidestepped, planting a plasma charge on the alien's back. This is for Epsilon Ridge, Vega said, detonating the charge. The explosion tore through the commander's armor, and he collapsed in a heap, his lifeless body smoldering. The battlefield fell silent as the remaining Krauth forces retreated, their morale shattered. Human soldiers cheered, their victory hard-earned and bittersweet. Vega stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving as he surveyed the scene. You did it, Captain, Zara said, landing her fighter nearby. She climbed out, her face streaked with soot but glowing with pride. We did it, Vega corrected, offering her a tired smile. Chan's voice came through the calm, filled with relief. The shield's holding. Reinforcements are en route. Vega nodded, the weight of the battle finally settling on his shoulders. We held the line. That's what matters. As the first rays of dawn broke over Epsilon Ridge, Vega allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The cost had been high, but humanity had proven its resilience once again. This wasn't just a victory, it was a message to the galaxy. No one would underestimate humanity again.